So last night I was in the bathroom washing my face and everybody was asleep. I was the only person in my house that was awake. So I'm sitting there washing my face and I hear like this, hold up, tapping right next to my fucking face. So I dry off my eyes and I look next to me and I don't see anything, and I couldn't see anything that would be making that noise. So I'm like, okay, we're fine, and I go back to washing my face. Then I hear my floors in my living room, like right around here, start creaking. Like somebody was walking around my living room. So I dry off my eyes again and I look into the living room to see if I see anything, and there's nothing there. So at that point, I'm getting a little fucking freaked out because I'm worried. So I look at my kitchen one last time and my lights are fucking flickering. So I was like, okay, you know what, that's enough for me tonight. I'm just gonna go to my room. So I just went in my room, I shut my door, and I stayed in my room. And that's all that happened that night, but it only gets worse.
Welcome to episode 1 of Paranormal Experiences that I'm willing to be hooked up to a lie detector over that actually happened to me. If you have seen the horror movie The Ritual on Netflix, you are in for a treat. The year is 2008. Me and a friend are walking through a nature reservation in New Jersey. We are about 5 miles in to woodlands and swamp. We decide to go off of the marked trails for about 30 minutes, so we're deep in the woods, and we see a clearing in the woods a little ways ahead. We're still pretty far away, but from a distance, we're able to see something prancing around this clearing that looks like a deer. So we think, let's go look at it. Well, we get about 20 feet away from this thing and we realize it's like 15 to 20 feet tall and also standing on its hind legs. To our absolute horror, we see this standing in front of us. The creature stopped prancing around and looked directly at us. I've never ran so fast in my life, and I've run from the cops before. I have dozens more stories, so if you want more episodes, let me know.
Got a paranormal story for y'all. This one's from a pediatric nurse. She was taking care of an 8-year-old boy with cancer and he coded, so his heart stopped. They started CPR, of course, and after a little bit, they were able to get him back. She says that a little bit later, she started telling him what happened, and she said, "Your heart stopped," and he said, "I know." He then said, "I watched you hit my chest. I stood there and held my papa's hand." And she said his mom was sitting there because his papa had died before he was born.
Story time part 1. So one day my family and I were sitting in our kitchen and we were all kind of going over what our worst nightmares have been. Everyone was like, oh, so-and-so died in my dreams and it was awful, which it is. But when it came to me, I was like, when I was little, I remember having this dream about this old lady and she would stand outside my window and just stare at me, like at night. You know, and for some reason, I don't remember exactly what happened in the dream, but she would want me to go with her. She was like trying to take me with her. And I'm sitting there like, haha, yeah, that was a weird dream. And then I look over to my mom and she just has this look on her face like, what did you just say? And I look at her and I'm like, yeah, you know, like I had this dream about this lady, and I explained the whole thing to her. And she just looks me dead in the eye and she's like, you remember that? I'm like, yeah, have I told you that before? And she's like, no, that wasn't a dream. That actually happened. That was real. I looked at her like, what do you mean that was real? Like, what? And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, was I like almost kidnapped as a kid? Why has no one told me, you know? And I was definitely not kidnapped, but someone did want me. I'll explain more in part 2.
This is why I stopped using Ouija boards. One day I took some friends to see if we can go get in contact with this girl who had recently passed away in mysterious circumstances. But shit got real weird real quick. So instead of getting normal responses on the board, we started getting ha 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 ha, then la la la, and then it ended on za 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 za. This then began the attachment of Zaza. From that point on, I got no other responses besides ZA, ZA, ZA over and over again. Doesn't matter what board I used or who I was using it with. At the time, I didn't realize that I started experiencing a lot of bad luck all around the same time. One of the things which was my hamsters dying within the same couple weeks. My boss started hating me after 2 years of working at her store, and then it was just bad vibes all around. So this prompted me to stop using the board for a while, but even when I used it later on in life, it still got the same result. I'm gonna do part 2.
Hey guys, so you asked for another spirit story, so here I am. Warning, the fire in this video gets a little crazy and I wasn't expecting that. Anyway, so here we go. This one happened recently and it's kind of funny. So I was in my room and I was chilling with a spirit and I was talking with a spirit, and I kind of got like weird vibes, like it wasn't the only one there. So I asked the spirit and any other presence to please leave, and it did. So I was like, okay, cool. So flash forward like about an hour or so, I hear my sister scream and call me into her room, and she is not a witch, not metaphysical or anything like that, and she looks at me, she's like, what did you do? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what did you do? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I know you did something witchy in this house, and there's something wrong with my room. And I'm like, oh, what's wrong with your room? She's like, my candles are lit. And I was like, oh. She's like, I didn't light my candles. I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, then I looked around her room, and there was a spirit.
So I don't know about you guys, but I desperately need a ghost story tonight. So I'm going to tell you one that is 100% real and still scares me to this day. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to my best friend growing up. She lives in a very haunted house, I know because I spent many a nights there on sleepovers, and she sent me pictures so I can visualize it for you guys. So this is Danielle's bedroom, and there used to be a desk right next to the head of the bed right there. One morning, Danielle woke up and her desk chair was actually facing the bed as if somebody had been sitting there and watching her sleep. She sent me this picture as an example. Yeah, no. Now the creepiest story takes place in this bedroom again, but notice the window right at the foot of her bed to the left right there. This is Danielle's backyard, and above me is the window to her bedroom, and to the right is her grandmother's window. One morning her grandmother called her and was like, what were you doing up so late? And Danielle was like, I went to bed at 10 p.m. Her grandma had gone to get a glass of water at 3 a.m. and looked up at Danielle's bedroom window. She said she saw the lights on and someone pacing back and forth in front of Danielle's bed.
Scary Things You Say Part 13. When I was 3, I would stand in my crib and talk a language to someone my mom couldn't see, and it wasn't baby talk. She said it sounded like tongues. No thanks. Once I was at home and heard my mom calling my name. Then I yelled, "What?" and didn't get a reply. 2 minutes later, I heard her yelling my name again. So I went downstairs to see why she was calling me, and then I noticed her car wasn't there because she went to go buy some food and I was home alone. Hell no, to the no, no, no. When I was 6 or 7, I used to play with a girl named Mila down in Key West. No one remembers her. I am 19 now and learned she's been dead for over 52 years.
Have you ever stayed the night in a house where someone got murdered? I have, and here's that story. It was my junior year of high school and I was staying the night at my friend Sierra's house. It was getting pretty late and we were laying in her bed ready to go to sleep. Then all of a sudden her door just jolted open, stayed open for a good 5 seconds, and then slammed shut. And my friend had about 8 siblings, so we didn't think much of it, we just thought it was one of them. Next day at school, Sierra comes up to me and was like, remember when our door opened and then shut randomly, we just thought it was one of my siblings? I was like, yes. She was like, well, turns out they were all downstairs sleeping at that point and my parents were asleep too, so don't know what that was. But wait, there's fucking more. Turns out the house that they lived in used to belong to an older couple. And the husband decided to murder his wife in the upstairs fucking bathroom, which was right next to where my friend's bedroom was. I don't know if it's a ghost or not, but all I'm saying is I'm so fucking scared and I never went back to the house again.
Some of you guys really like my paranormal story, so here's another one. So this one happened at my friend's house. Since we're not really friends anymore, her name is Tracy. So we were sitting in her living room. Her parents had walked out a little while ago. We were sitting there by ourselves. We knew her parents were going to be gone for a little while, so we were just like, you know what, we're just going to chill and watch movies because we never got to sit in the living room while they were there. I remember her parents having this like really cool TV and like this really cool setup, so we liked it in there. And we were in between watching movies when we both distinctly heard her name being called. We straight up just heard somebody go, Tracy! So we yelled back, or she yelled back. What? We got no answer. So we got up and went into her parents' bedroom, but they weren't there and we knew they weren't there. So we looked all around the house. We even called the neighbors who were just across the street and they didn't know what we were talking about. So they didn't call for her. We went back into the living room, hadn't started the movie yet, and we hear my name being called. We never found out what that was, and it only happened a few times since.
I think that my house is haunted, but I think that it's a friendly ghost because something happened to me this morning that I literally have no other explanation for. Little backstory, I've lived in this house for about a year. And even when I'm home alone, I never really feel like I'm alone. Sometimes the lights will randomly turn on, and sometimes I see things out of the corner of my eye. So here's what happened this morning. Usually my fiance will leave for work before I even wake up. And because I can't live without caffeine, he'll set the coffee pot up for me, so all I have to do when I wake up is turn it on. So this morning I wake up, I lay in bed for a few minutes, and then I go out into the kitchen to turn on the coffee pot. And the coffee pot is already brewing my coffee. So I text Anthony and I'm like, hey, did you have a late start this morning? Thanks so much for starting coffee for me. He texts me back and says, babe, I don't know what you're talking about. I left for work 2 hours ago. Our coffee pot doesn't have a timer on it. So, thanks, ghost friend.
She must have been out of her head. Here it is.
Okay, here's part 3. So I'm going to tell you the reason why I think there is a demon or a ghost following me. So I used to live in a very, 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 very small town named Moni, Illinois. And that's like the house I grew up in. And I loved it. It was full of happy memories, this and that. But then my dad got a little bow thing, so we had to move to Indiana. So instead of selling the house, he decided to rent it out. I don't know, something to do with money, so he could get them on dough, baby. So he rents out the house, and he's having nobody rent it until he gets his family that decides to rent it out. And it was a husband, a wife, and 2 kids. So around a month after living there, shit went to the roof. One night, the husband decided to shoot and kill his wife, sprayed the entire house with bullets, and then shot the daughter she lived, and then drove off. He drove off and killed himself. Here it is. Crazy part is, they were killed in my bedroom. So I asked my mom if there was anything really creepy I did when I was younger. And she said when I was 4 or 5, I always said I worked for the devil. And that I would like torture and abuse my sister and always blame it on the devil. I do remember taking her stuffed animals, cutting them in half, throwing them in a closet and locking her in the closet with them. And I'd leave her in there for fucking hours. Just her screaming and crying, let me out. And I'd always say, no, the devil wants me to keep you in there longer. I would even like rip out her hair and my mom would be like, hey, you can't fucking do that. Like that's literal abuse. And I would always say, well, the devil wants me to. By the way, I was like 4 or 5. The behavior did stop when we moved out of that house. I don't know what age I was, but when we moved out, I was fine. But it only gets worse.
Suddenly, I just heard someone like bang the wardrobe. Yeah, it's like that. I was like, and I wanted to see it, but I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move or anything.
So you were
I was just like
paralyzed, so to speak, right?
Yeah. And then after that, someone just like comes to me, and then they're just like laughing at me.
It's so scary.
And I was like, no.
But you couldn't move?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
But you couldn't scream?
Move. Yeah. I couldn't do anything.
How did you break out of it?
I was just like, and then I just woke up, and then I go out and sleep at the living room.
Oh.
Yeah.
하얀 손 하나가 보여서.
Oh no.
You guys have to tell me what she's saying. What's going on?
I will translate this.
하얀 손이.
So she was in front of the mirror just like practicing her moves and stuff. And apparently amongst the clothes she saw like a white hand.
Oh Jesus.
And so she was so frightened, she ran out and she closed the door and everything, and that kind of like passed. And apparently Lisa came back home from Thailand, and apparently she went and talked to someone that like just what do you call them here?
Sense?
Has like senses these things.
Like a psychic?
Yeah, like
Okay.
a psychic.
Yeah,
gotcha.
And apparently she told her that there's a ghost in the wardrobe.
In your house, so
In
be careful.
outdoor, yeah.
And
So be
Lisa
careful.
said this without knowing what happened to Jisoo.
She must have been out of her head.